let's get to Pamela Bondi, head of the Department of Justice, and what she said just yesterday about Nicolas Maduro. I post, dude, who wants to go to Venezuela with me?
Today, the Department of Justice and State Department are announcing a historic $50 million reward for information leading to the arrest of Nicolas Maduro. Maduro uses foreign terrorist organizations like TDA, Sinaloa, and Cartel of the Suns to bring deadly drugs and violence into our country. To date, the DEA has seized 30 tons of cocaine linked to Maduro and his associates, with nearly 7 tons linked to Maduro himself, which represents a primary source of income for the deadly cartels based in Venezuela and Mexico. Cocaine is often laced with fentanyl, resulting in the loss and destruction of countless American lives. The DOJ has seized over $700 million of Maduro-linked assets, including 2 private jets, 9 vehicles, and more. Yet Maduro's reign of terror continues. He is one of the largest narco traffickers in the world and a threat to our national security. Therefore, we've doubled his reward to $50 million. Under President Trump's leadership, Maduro will not escape justice, and he will be held accountable for his despicable crimes. If you have any information to bring this criminal to justice, call 1-202-307-4228 or go online.
Fantastic. Fantastic stuff. Because when it comes to Nicolas Maduro, the man is genuinely one of the most evil, vile, people on planet Earth. This socialist, communist, full-on communist that has risen to power and has held on to that power illegally through fraudulent elections. We're going to look, hopefully you remember the result of the 2024 election where Maduro was announced as the winner of that election, and it's like, give me a break. Edmundo Gonzalez had a 70% landslide victory. 70%. Okay, when it came to Gonzalez victory in 2024 in Venezuela, we, in the same year, 2024, look at the election of President Trump. Praise God Almighty that President Trump won against Kamala Harris. And we call it a landslide victory. And it was. In the United States of America, that victory for Donald Trump was absolutely a landslide. To win all of the swing states was extraordinary. Absolutely amazing. But when it came to the same year, earlier that year in July 2024 in Venezuela, the election there, Edmundo Gonzalez, won against Maduro, that he was the main challenger to Maduro, and he won with the most insane level landslide victory. 70%, almost 3/4 of the entire Venezuelan population was voting to get Maduro out and to have this other individual, Gonzalez, put in. But what happened? Those loyal to Maduro, they came out and announced that Nicolas Maduro has won the 2024 election. And I mean, we're talking about evidence of voter fraud that is greater than the evidence of voter fraud that we saw in 2020 here in the United States. The 2020 election was absolutely stolen. There's no question about that. We have Donald Trump winning against Biden. Biden's down here. Biden's down here. Biden's down here. Then all of a sudden, boom! 3 a.m, all of a sudden, we just right on. Oh, Biden won. We announced Biden is the victor. We have video footage. We have absolute evidence of entire suitcases full being wheeled in the middle of the night, and being counted and all these things. And just boom, oh, Biden, Biden wins. 81 million people voted for Biden. No. Okay? No. It's just absolute insanity that we saw in 2020. To an even greater degree, the Venezuelan people see this, where the evidence is overwhelming that Gonzalez won by a huge margin. But Maduro comes out and says, well, okay, well, Maduro's Maduro won. Maduro remains president of Venezuela. And of course, the entire nation erupted. We're going to be looking at that. But something that I did want to mention first is how these bounties, historically, they have worked. They have worked in the past. One example of this was the United States put out a bounty of $20 million on Rafael Caro Quintero, and he was a leader of MS-13, one of the MS-13 gang leaders. And the bounty was the reason that led to his capture. Because what happens is that you have the evil individual that the bounty is, on this person's head, and that person being of this world and being satanic and everything that is of this world, well, he is surrounded by other people who are like him, who are also wicked and also perverse and also of this world and desire the things of this world, the glory of this world and the riches of this world. You put a bounty big enough and you just see where their loyalty lies. Is their loyalty going to actually lie with the individual, or are they going to do everything possible to see to it that this individual is captured so that they can get the bounty? Although I do personally like the idea of dude, who wants to go to Venezuela with me? Do I got any volunteers? Anyone want to go to Venezuela with me? We can make a trip down to Venezuela for a bit. Obviously, a joke, would never happen. But yeah, it's like if I happen to have super human abilities, like Superman level abilities, I'd be like, hey, hold on, guys, I just need to make a short flight to Venezuela. I'll be right back. Fly to Venezuela. Boom, capture Maduro. Deliver him. Handcuffed and everything, chained up right to Pamela Bondi in the Department of Justice. Like, here you go. $50 million, please. That would be great. Thank you. It's like, yeah, anyone who wants to go to Venezuela with me. But we look at this election in 2024. Absolutely awful. That Maduro has been in power now for many years. He was vice president under Hugo Chavez. And Chavez, when he was diagnosed with cancer in 2012, he made Maduro his successor. Maduro then, there was an election in 2013, and it's one of these things that, he narrowly won, it was like the margin was talking like this 1%, Maduro won in 2013 to become president of Venezuela by a margin of like 1.5%, and, about that. But then there was another election in 2018, where there was some evidence of some fraud going on, but then there was the election of 24, where the evidence was, the mountain of evidence to prove beyond any question that Gonzalez is the rightful president of Venezuela. Excuse me, the rightful president of Venezuela, and Maduro is not. Maduro lost, clearly lost. Overwhelming. We're talking like a Mount Everest size proof. And that would be, what someone, may say when it comes to this $50 million bounty on the head of Nicolas Maduro, is they may say that, this is just the United States looking to overthrow another country, looking to overthrow a president of another country, but that's just it. Maduro is not the president of Venezuela. He is not. Just like during the 4 years of Biden's, quote, presidency, Biden wasn't the president. Not really, not truthfully. Trump won. He absolutely won. He won in 2016, he won in 2020, and praise God, he also won in 2024. And we, the American people, were wise enough to the games of the left that we were working hard to ensure that there wasn't going to be mass voter fraud like we saw in 2020. But when it comes to Maduro, rightfully and truthfully, he is not the president of Venezuela. The rightful president of Venezuela, by the will of the people of Venezuela, is not Nicolas Maduro. It is Edmundo Gonzalez. And the people, when it was announced that Maduro had won, obviously they come out by the hundreds of thousands against this. So this was, got to remember this was July of last year, July of 24. Another election stolen. Maduro's regime has placed orders for the National Electoral Council, those that are in favor of Maduro, to threaten imprisonment for 6 to 15 years for anyone protesting and rejecting the fraudulent Venezuelan election results. Very similar thing that we see the Biden administration do with the January 6ers at the Capitol. The January 6ers, and yes, there was the FBI that was there that was fomenting it. There was Antifa there that was fomenting it from George, paid by George Soros. But still, there were plenty of people that were there. And what happened to all of these, so many of these January 6ers? The Biden administration hunted them down and threw them in prison. And praise God, once Trump got in office, he pardoned all of these January 6ers. But this is the same type of deal. A corrupt, evil person using the power of the government that, hey, you don't like that I'm in power? You don't like the results of the election? Well, we're looking at 6 to 15 years in prison. You protest, and you reject this election result. I won. I'm Nicolas Maduro, and I won. No, you didn't. And here is something that you always need to know about communism. Venezuela, you cannot vote your way out of communism. Riots erupt as the Maduro regime declares itself the winner after an obvious landslide loss. Yeah, they lost by a huge, huge margin. We're talking only 30% was for Maduro, 70% against Maduro for Gonzalez. So a massive landslide loss. But you need to know this, that you cannot vote your way out of communism. You can vote your way into communism. Yeah. But you cannot vote your way out of it. The only way that you can get out from communism is by the sword, is by the fist, is by the gun. That's all. That's the only way. There is no way to get yourself out legally, to get yourself out by elections and voting out of a communist regime. It does not work. Cannot work. 2024, Venezuela, and many other examples throughout history have proven that. So you can vote yourself into communism, but you cannot vote yourself out from communism. Maduro's socialist government, really communist government, but the flavors of difference between socialism and communism, it's very, very small. It's all wrapped up in Marxism. Karl Marx is the founder of all these ideologies as inspired and directed by Satan, because Karl Marx was a Satanist. So it's Marxism, fascism, socialism, communism. It's all wrapped up in what you can generally refer to as leftism. Just subtle, very, very subtle variations, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Maduro's socialist government has now activated hundreds of thugs with guns to go around threatening and intimidating election workers around Venezuela. Even to the point of shooting them. Armed Chavista groups, that is starting with Hugo Chavez, communist Hugo Chavez, sent by Maduro, are now shooting at civilians. This is why you never give up your guns. Ever. Because all tyrants, that's the first thing they do when they are looking to overpower a population and establish themselves as a communist regime. They get rid of guns from the civilian populace. And so when it comes to Europe, when it comes to the UK, when it comes to Australia, you guys were stupid to give up your guns. Have you not learned anything from history? What was the first thing that Adolf Hitler did with the German people? Outlawed guns. That's what the Nazis did. You can't have guns. The civilian populace can't have guns. And when you outlaw guns, only the outlaws can have the guns or will have the guns. So you never, ever give up your guns. This is, of course, why America's founding fathers are so wise. The First Amendment to the Constitution, Bill of Rights, number 1, free speech, freedom of expression and religion. Freedom of speech, number 1. But how do you protect that? How do you protect freedom of speech? How do you protect your religious liberties, your freedom of expression? How do you do it? Guns. Amendment 2. That's how it's done. If you get rid of the guns, you get rid of the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression or religion. But here they went out, sent by Maduro. They shot civilians. Excuse me. Other examples of this, we got Maduro's armed groups shoot at protesters in Caracas. Because, of course, the people were gathering and protesting in enormous numbers. But this kind of protesting ultimately never works, because if you're going to fight, if you're going to use violence to fight against a communist regime and a communist leader, you have to have organization. It can't just be chaotic violence. Chaotic violence will never ultimately work, because the communist leader will use violence in return, but organized violence. Leadership-driven, direction, goal-driven violence. And that will always win against chaotic violence. Chaotic violence will never accomplish anything. Violence can accomplish things. War is violence. The Revolutionary War, that was violence, of course. But it was leadership, goal-driven violence for an intended. You have to have an established goal. This is what we're fighting for. This is our goal. This is our leadership. This is how we're going to be organized. But chaotic violence, just protesters running in the street, throwing Molotov cocktails and things like that, it never works. Never works. The result is always the leadership, goal-driven violence against them always is the victor. But yes, we had thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that were taking to the streets over the 2024 Venezuela election. Some of these, Caracas, Venezuela. Crowds of people chanting freedom protested and rioted over the disputed election, where Maduro was announced the winner again. Once again, in 2018, there's dispute over whether he won in 2018, and 99% probability he didn't. It was also fraudulent, but the evidence in 2024 was just overwhelming. So he's announced as the winner again. Protesters have been facing off against the military, police, and left-wing paramilitaries loyal to Maduro. Hundreds of thousands of people, once again, taking to the streets. Hundreds of thousands. We get to, here's another example of this. But because it's chaotic violence, it's not goal-driven violence, it's not organized violence against the evil of Maduro and the evil of his communist regime, it ultimately doesn't work. You have to be organized, you have to have it be directed at a specific goal. Thousands continue to protest across Venezuela over the election results, accusing socialist President Maduro of rigging the results after the opposition was projected to win by a landslide. Yeah, 70%, landslide victory. So my hope is that Maduro will be brought to justice, and if the United States of America has to be the one to get the job done, well then praise God for the United States of America and praise God for the Trump administration and Pamela Bondi and the DOJ to get the job done. Because Nicolas Maduro is an evil, evil man who, it's not just the Venezuelan people, of course, that he has harmed. That when it comes to, the 2024 election, the actual number of those killed by Maduro's, forces against the populace, numbers range. We don't know the exact number. At the very, very least, we're looking at 25 civilians that were killed in these protests, specifically by Maduro's forces. But the numbers could be as high as 300. We don't know. And that's just it. When it comes to actual verified sources of the numbers of people that were killed, it's somewhere in the range of 25 to 300. So not only has Maduro, been horrendous against his own people, but when it comes to, of course, the United States of America, he has harmed American citizens. And so we have with the drug trafficking primarily. The U.S. has consistently accused Maduro of leading a narco state, with the 2020 indictments marking a significant escalation. The U.S. claims Maduro regime uses drug trafficking to fund itself amid economic collapse, with cocaine shipments targeting the U.S. market. And that's just it, is that just recently, 50 tons of cocaine, 50 tons of the stuff was seized by the Department of Justice, with 7 tons of it directly linked to Maduro. So the amount of cocaine and fentanyl laced, specifically cocaine, that pours into the United States of America, or certainly did during the Biden administration, now we're finally cracking down on this, is unbelievable. 50 tons was just seized, 7 of which, once again, directly linked to Maduro. So the man, brings in just this horrendous amount of drugs and destruction into the United States of America. So when it comes to the Department of Justice, this is something that Pamela Bondi, mentioned. Oh, excuse me. I got the number wrong. I apologize about the number. The number in my head was 50. It was 30. 30 tons. I apologize. So correction there. 30 tons with 7 tons directly tied to Maduro. So seized assets and evidence, and we'll conclude with this. The Department of Justice cited the seizure of $700 million in Maduro-linked assets, including 2 private jets, along with multiple vehicles, as evidence of his illicit wealth. And that's the thing, when it comes to communism and communist leadership, communism benefits no one except the top dogs. If you're not at the pinnacle of the hierarchy of power, well, then communism is horrendous for everyone beneath. Just look at North Korea. North Korea, you got millions of its own people starving. Literally starving. There's a North Korean defector, very popular North Korean defector, Yana Park, I believe her name is Yana Park, and she talks about her experiences in North Korea and her family's experiences and what she had to go through in order to get out of North Korea. Definitely check it out. Once again, I know her last name is Park. I believe her first name may be Yana. You look at the North Korean population and they're starved. If they even hint at being against the Kim family, the Kim regime, they and the next generation are taken into concentration camps for re-education. That when it came to Park and her testimony about what goes on in North Korea, that every home has to have multiple pictures of the Kim family because they worshipped as gods there. And at any point, soldiers from North Korea's army can burst into their home to check their home. And even if they find dust, if there is dust on the picture frames of the Kim family, you're going into a concentration camp for re-education. That kind of stuff is going down. So, but when it comes to wealth, you got Kim at the top, Kim Jong-un, his father before him and his grandfather before him. They live as gods. They live as kings in their palace. That's the only people that are benefited by communism. That's it. Everyone else suffers. And so when it comes to Maduro, yeah, he's got all of this wealth that has been illegally he has illegally gained. So the DOJ cited the seizure of $700 million worth in Maduro-linked assets, including 2 private jets, luxurious private jets, multiple vehicles, as evidence of his illicit wealth. And the DEA seized 30 tons of cocaine, with 7 tons directly tied to Maduro, and was presented as proof of his trafficking involvement. And so my hope, sincerest of hopes, is that the DOJ, with the doubling of the bounty on the head of Nicolas Maduro, I hope that those close to Maduro, they're going to be going, okay, I was loyal to this guy, but no, I'm gonna provide whatever information I need to provide to the United States so that this person can be taken care of, and yeah, there can be a reward in it. And oftentimes that's what has to happen. In fact, my beautiful wife Martha, she is from Bogota, Colombia, this nation right next to Venezuela. And she's told me the accounts of, you'll have to forgive me, I forgot the name, it's just, it slipped my mind, but he was the leader of Colombia for many, many years, and he was, when it came to the trafficking of drugs, Colombia was the king of cocaine. Everyone knew that. When it goes back into the 70s and the 80s and 90s, if it was Colombia, it was cocaine, right? And ultimately what had to happen to this individual is he had to be taken out. He had to be assassinated. Who was it that actually did it? The United States. The United States. And praise God for it. That the United States has the power, has the resources, has the ability to go in and take care of these horrendously evil people so that, justice can be done. And so if the United States has to take care of Maduro, because the people of Venezuela can't do it. The people of Venezuela, they tried. They tried to fight against Maduro and his regime, and they failed. If the United States has to step in and get the job done, then once again, praise God for it.